Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Entrepreneurial Strategy Series. My name is David Postalski. I am an intellectual property, here she comes, intellectual property and patent attorney at Gearhart Law. Um, we are super excited to have this presentation. The Entrepreneurial Strategy Series is something that we do every month. We put these on usually the last Thursday of every month at this time. We start a half hour before. So those of you who joined us late, you can always come a little bit before and you can introduce yourself and meet all the other participants. We usually put on presentations that are related to the entrepreneurial journey. So from concept to exit or anything thereafter. Super excited to have our speakers today. This is all about food, so you've come to the right place. You're going to hear some amazing stories, and it's going to be super fun. So I'm going to let them introduce themselves. We do encourage questions. We encourage them to be chatted. We'll monitor them. There will be some time at the end to also possibly ask your question live if you've chatted it, and or just ask a question live. This, as you know, is being recorded. It will be sent to you, be sent to all registrants and attendees probably in about a week. We will also provide other information about our speakers and how to get in touch with them as well if they don't if they don't share their information now. But I think already one or two have already shared their information in the chat. We encourage all of you to share your information in the chat. This video will also live on at the Gearhart Law YouTube channel. And so there's all the past entrepreneurial strategy series that we've been doing for the last 3 years. And so check out those as well. Let's get into it. So I'm going to start the formal presentation. I'm going to ask our speakers to introduce themselves. First up, we have the dynamic duo, Peter and Emma. Of Shocking Foods. Maybe Peter, Emma, maybe you can take the floor away. We'll stop sharing the splash screen, and you can have the spotlight and let everybody know in just a short introduction as to who you are, what you're working on.
Hi everyone. I'm Peter. I will be coming in the middle. I know it looks weird, but we tested the mic and it works the best in the middle. So bear with us here. It's two of us sharing the same mic. So Emma and Peter from Shocking Foods. And by the way, if you can't hear me or Emma, just let us know and we'll come in closer. Shocking Foods. We are a couple of entrepreneurs, you might say, and a couple. We had our first business, an award-winning restaurant in Ireland.
13 years ago.
13 years ago. This is our third business now. What? No, I think it's
the fourth.
Fast forward, just before the pandemic, we had an award-winning catering company, and we were based in London, and we were serving a lot of big companies like Facebook, Google, Amazon. But with the pandemic, everything came to a halt, and we were in a very dark place.
Lost nearly everything.
At some point, we didn't even have enough money to take a bus home from London, so that was really...
Yeah, we were made nearly homeless. From having a successful business to literally zero because of the pandemic, but it actually gave us an opportunity to a couple of months to develop what we are now, which is a gourmet vegan meat company and a sustainable brand too. Yeah.
So Emma has a Michelin background. She's, you know, Emma is very shy, but only on screen she's actually such a huge personality. I let her talk. My background is more corporate. So I look after the strategy, the finance side of things, and funding. So we were bootstrapping for a really long time until we got investment from Big Idea Ventures, and we were part of their accelerator in Paris, and that basically accelerated our business. But you should talk about yourself. I'm taking over.
No, it's fine. So can everyone hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes,
okay.
Perfect.
Great, because we had some issues yesterday. Perfect. So I suppose I'm the COO, Peter is the CEO of the company, and I'm a head chef and previously a recipe developer and head of food for some big brands in the UK. So my background is I'm a Michelin trained head chef, working to, I suppose, the highest level, really. So I've previously worked with Heston Blumenthal, who on the San Pellegrino list would be considered the best male chef in the world. And I've also worked under Helen de Rosa, Michelin 3 stars, and she has been awarded San Pellegrino best female chef in the world. So I worked to a very kind of gourmet, high-end level. We had our own award-winning restaurant in Ireland, but obviously that's a very male-dominated environment. So to get to those levels in food required 18, sometimes 20-hour days. I'm very ambitious. So I worked for an awful long time, and I had kitchen burnout, and I nearly died essentially when I was operating at a high level, at a high head chef level, because you literally, that's why no women do it. There's no sense in it. Women are usually very sensible. So for me to get to that very high level, I was losing my hair. I nearly died. I was hospitalized. And then I realized that I had to actually turn vegan to, we had already been making our food vegan anyway for a lot of our corporate clients, but I personally had to turn vegan. And I found it really difficult to veganize everything. And I'm a professional recipe developer. So I realized that if I find it difficult, gosh, and it changed my life from a health perspective, I really want to impart that on other people. So I realized for myself and Peter out there and people we know, we like really good food. So as a vegan, what was available to me was chicken nuggets, sausages, and burgers. There was no gourmet charcuterie. There was no foie gras anymore. You know, there was no spicy andouille. So I said to myself, right, I'm going to create these because they're not on the market. And so we did, and we went to the R&D in the products. And so we make gourmet charcuterie and sliced meats, foie gras, andouille. Just won a Great Taste Award for that, globally recognized. So it's phenomenal. So we've won loads of awards in the past 6 months. And we sold our first pallet, and we're on a TV show as of last week, the UK version of Shark Tank, essentially. So that's generated 600,000 Google searches and millions of viewers all across the UK. So we're riding high at the minute, but it wasn't always that way. There were plenty of low points along the way, for sure. So, even a few weeks ago, but we'll get into that afterwards.
Yeah, no, so you packed a lot in there. We definitely will break some of that down for sure. There's a lot to talk about, but we'll come back to you in a second. I want to introduce Vanessa Small. Vanessa, maybe you can introduce yourself and your company and how you got into this crazy life, some would say.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm actually just got off stage from pitching. So just the normal day of an entrepreneur. I just had a live pitch event in Chicago. So hi, I'm Vanessa, biochemist by training. Spent the first half of my year of my career in pharma, doing structural biology, drug discovery screening. Didn't really like pharma, didn't like the life cycle of pharma. And transitioned over to healthcare diagnostics, making high-value protein enzymes, antibodies, and the like for all types of diagnostic tests, anything from birth control or pregnancy tests to infectious disease. I was recruited over to my last company where I was one of the founding scientists and helped scale that company to about 1,600, and we IPO'd in 2021. That allowed me some sort of soul searching, and I wanted to reapply my skill set to a problem that was more near and dear to me. And so I think food insecurity and the future of food is something important that more people in the field or in the scientific side need to tackle. And so after that exit, it allowed me to sort of soul search, and I decided to transition to a different side of biotech, the food tech space. And I launched Alchemy Bio about 2 years ago, where we are focused on creating enzymes to improve the quality, nutritional value, flavor, texture of alternative proteins. So everything from cultivated meat in the most technical side to mycoprotein and precision fermented ingredients. And we can get into some of the differences between all those classes of products. It's been a great ride so far, but a lot of challenges in the space, and it's very different from the biotech that I came from. So I'm learning a lot, especially with the food science side of things. It's very complex. But we can get more into all of those challenges, but it's been great. I'm happy to be here.
So excited for you to be here. Thank you so much. I don't know if you said it, but you're calling from the West Coast.
Yeah, I'm based in San Diego, but right now I'm in Chicago for a food tech conference.
Awesome. Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you. Finally, Juan from microTERRA. Introduce yourself, please.
Sure thing. Thank you, David. Yeah, very excited to be here. I'm Juan Rion from microTERRA. I'm based in Mexico. This is where our company is based out of, Mexico City, although we do have operations nearby in a city called Querétaro, where we have our farms. But a little bit about myself. I'm environmental engineer by training. I worked as an innovation consultant for a while, looking at innovation platforms, future trends for a variety of different clients, and then pivoted towards being more on the sustainability side of things. So really helping a lot of clients think about the future of sustainability within their industry and within their particular company. So I was leading projects like the future of sustainable coffee in the next 10 years for Nespresso, and seeing how they can adjust their supply chain, launch a new product, their packaging, everything like that. After that, I launched my own business, my own startup, which is called Carbon Cell, which is a carbon negative biodegradable foam, which is designed to replace polystyrene. It's 3 times stronger, and it's also, like I said, carbon negative. So it's made out of biochar. And from that, I decided to come back to Mexico, where I'm from, and join microTERRA, just because I think Mexico is incredible. There's a ton of potential there. And I think the food tech, biotech sphere is quite exciting, particularly in Latin America. So what we do at microTERRA is really produce functional ingredients while cleaning water. So what we do is we use this aquatic plant called lemna, or duckweed, or water lentil is also commonly known. And what we do is we grab effluent wastewater from greenhouses, usually hydroponic greenhouses, which are charged with a lot of different nutrients, right? A lot of different fertilizers, mostly nitrogen and phosphorus, that eventually, if they lead to the ocean, they cause eutrophication. Maybe you guys have seen in the news the massive algal blooms that are affecting a lot of places in the Caribbean and Mexico in particular. So we kind of cut that pollution at the source, and then we use that in a system of lagoons to grow duckweed, which we then process through our proprietary technology and extract these functional ingredients. The first of which is called Flora, which we launched recently, and it's a flavor modulator. So what essentially it does, and we're still kind of trying it in a bunch of different verticals, but it helps reduce sugar content in a lot of different formulations without sacrificing taste or texture, right? So it potentiates sweetness. So, say in ice cream, you can reduce the sugar by 10, 15%, add a very low amount of our ingredient, around 0.1 to 0.4%, and you still maintain the same taste experience, the same level of sweetness, and you don't compromise texture or other qualities, right? And we're expanding to build more functional ingredients based off this raw material, and then trying to build a platform around it. So very excited to be here and have this conversation with you guys.
Amazing. Thank you, Juan. We'll stick on you for a little bit if we can.
Sure.
I kind of want to get this topic out of the way. I mean, if for sure, I mean, as an intellectual property attorney, I think it's important that we at least, kind of speak about this. Everybody's wanting to protect the things that they create, whether it's based in science or their brand or in how their menus look, right? There's all sorts of ways to protect yourself. Can you talk a little bit about maybe your personal experience with intellectual property in your previous companies, and maybe how it relates to kind of the kind of overall strategy of microTERRA? Yeah, maybe you can. And I'm going to ask the same of Vanessa, Peter, and Emma also. So, but first, you please, if you can.
Sure, absolutely. So with my previous company, with Carbon Cell, we did patent. We have, I guess, a provisional patent right now on 2 different aspects of our product. So first, we have a provisional patent on the process to create our foam. So we expand biochar into this foam, and we have a provisional patent on that, on the technology of how the mechanics around it work in simple terms, right? And then the actual final material is also patented. So we have 2 patents, and that's similar to actually the strategy that we applied at microTERRA. So we have 2 provisional patents that we filed earlier this year. One is on the composition of matter of the final ingredients, so on Flora. So all the different components that Flora has, and all the places where we can apply Flora, right? So we've explored the potential that it has in ice cream, and beverages, and jams, and a bunch of different kind of food products, and all the I guess, sensory qualities that it can provide, plus kind of like the composition of the ingredient itself we've protected. But we've also protected, through this provisional patent, the extraction process, right? So how we grab the plant, we have a pre-treatment process, we have an extraction process that we patented, which is proprietary and that we developed ourselves. And we're also using the provisional patent for the moment to launch kind of our trade secret strategy, right? So we've protected through a provisional patent at the moment, but we're considering several parts of that whole system that we're just going to keep as a trade secret right now, instead of trying to patent it and potentially make it public so that other people can recreate it. And maybe we can pursue licensing strategies in the future, which is part of our strategy in the long term. But we kind of have both. We have the trade secret aspect of kind of the conversion of our raw material into our final ingredient, and then the ingredient itself as our IP.
Awesome. Can you talk just a little bit about trademarks and if the company has kind of sought to protect their name?
Yeah. So we've pivoted a couple times in the past, as every entrepreneur and startup does. So microTERRA had a slightly different logo and slightly different name in the past, and we trademarked that. And now we've trademarked those as well to protect our name and our logos, primarily here in Mexico, which is quite a similar process in the US. So we have that as well. We have all that content protected, which our team did recently as well.
Amazing. Yeah, I mean, just as important as the patent as well. More science. Vanessa, what about you?
So my background coming from pharma and healthcare diagnostics, patents were always top of mind. And I would say, being a protein engineer, biochemist, a lot of the work that I did was, I don't want to say patent busting, but really creating new assets for the company that I was working for, but building that into the actual design of the protein, the sequence of the protein, and all of that. So coming from that background, that's what my wheelhouse was, and that was the first thing I really wanted to do in creating my own, building my own company, is kind of think through what my expertise was, what my goal was in terms of the kinds of assets that I were creating. And the first provisional patent that I submitted last year was maybe 2 or 3 months into us really having some deeper science. And it was before my first conference. And so once I started to talk a little more openly about what we were building, I wanted to have some protections around that, even if we didn't have the actual clones completed at that time yet. So that was my first provisional I submitted, was on the process, and similar to Juan, the extraction method of how we were going to go about analyzing some of the products that we were working with our customers on. Since then, I've submitted 2 additional provisionals, more focused on the formulation of both our enzymes and some of the targets that we're using to help our customers. As of last week, we submitted our first PCT application for a non-provisional. And I think I just saw in the chat about budget. It was not cheap. It was probably one of the most high legal spends that I've had since forming the company, but I wanted to make sure it was done right and we had broad coverage going in. And so that was the lens that I took. And so moving forward this year, we're building out additional provisional applications for some of the different use cases and some of the novel proteins that I'm currently cloning in-house. So always kind of thinking about what we're doing now and then what we want to do in 6 months, and making sure we have a plan and strategy for that.
I love that. I think that's important. For those of you who don't know, the PCT application is the international patent application that one files to make sure that they're able to file in another country other than where they started from. But Vanessa, I want to stick on you a little bit more, because Juan brought up some good topics about trade secret. Is that part of your, because I think it's good for people to hear that there is a way to do both. So I'm curious if Alkene Bio has
Absolutely.
Has that trade secret, and then also if you can talk about your kind of branding also.
Yeah, absolutely. I forgot to mention that point. So on the foundation of everything that we're building is a database that we ingest data from multiple different sources in order to best characterize the data that we're getting from our customers. And that is being kept as a trade secret, in the sense, the way that we're building our algorithm, the kind of data that we're ingesting, the architecture of the database itself. We're keeping that as a trade secret. after speaking with my patent attorney and submitting our non-provisional, he does think that there are aspects of that we might want to include in future patents. So we're still having that discussion, but we do have quite a bit of proprietary knowledge and assets that we're keeping out of our current patent strategy. In terms of the trademarks, we did submit a trademark on the approach that we're taking. We're calling our approach molecular flavoring in the sense that right now, the way that this approach is done currently is just, think of the big flavor houses, they add salt and ingredients at the end, you get this long label. And so we're taking an approach of trying to increase the integration of these products upstream so that as cells are growing, they can take up nutrients and flavor and things that impact their other characteristics other than growth. And so that was put under a trade secret. We also plan on making or submitting a design application on some of the basically data readouts, the reports that we deliver to our customers.
Very cool. So I want to thank you for that. I want to so if you've just joined us or heard, Vanessa and Juan are their companies are highly based in science and in actual life science. So of course, patents and the decision to keep something trade secret are huge. Peter and Emma, I think it's a little bit different from you, or it is a little different for you now as you're starting out. Maybe you can talk about your IP strategy and how and kind of how it started and how it might be developing.
Okay. Yes. Basically, we have no IP strategy when we started. Being a business that comes from kitchen and using recipes, we were just focused on creating food, getting customers, and in fairness, we never really needed IP in our previous businesses because we were just a restaurant, and even as a catering business, there's an argument to be made for IP, of course, but when it's just two people starting out, you're just rolling up your sleeves and you're just trying to make the company as a brand stick and get the customers through the door. So that was our focus. And when we pivoted into vegan food, initially we were just focused on doing maybe a small kind of deli type of food, maybe open a place. We weren't even thinking about building a global company. And that's why we were not even thinking about IP as such. Through the process of acceleration with Big Idea Ventures, where we actually met David, who was the mentor when it comes to IP, we realized our mistakes and we had to change our name to start with. So we were Veganly Deli, and we were not able to secure this name. We had to look at what value we can build around intellectual property as a company, because now
It's very important for investors as well.
exactly. So when you're just doing it by yourself, you might not think this is important, but because we are bringing in other investors and now we have to think about funding rounds, about the valuation of the company.
There's a lot of new considerations. Yeah.
And when it comes to our IP, we had to look at, okay, we don't have the science, you can't protect the recipe. So our IP will be based around the brand. So we need to protect our name, product names, and we have to look at potentially protecting our packaging, maybe color scheme. So all these things went into our consideration. Next consideration is, Paul mentions the budget, which is for a startup is a really big consideration. Are you going to be thinking about IP? You still have to have packaging, you have to pay for so many different things. So I think if we were to start over from scratch, we would have been incorporating IP into our budgets from the get-go. But where we landed after the accelerator program, or our money was going to scaling up from commercial kitchen onto the
manufacturing plants. Yeah.
and a lot of factories would want money in advance. They want you to pay for some of the testing, the trials that you have to do on the factory floor, invest in ingredients.
For the small to medium business, you're dealing with orders, or even your
Yeah,
bank balance. You're dealing in Oh, so can you hear
Yeah,
me?
Emma,
You're-
yeah, just come more center. Yeah,
You
please.
got me there. So as a small to medium business, even if you have the idea of scaling up and you're dealing in a food business, you're dealing in hundreds of pounds. Now, when it comes to scaling up even nationally or internationally, you're dealing in thousands or hundreds of thousands. So there's far different considerations, even when it comes to trying to scale up and deal with manufacturers. Straight away, we're talking 10, 20, 30,000 you could lose with a bad decision, whereas previously it was a couple of £100. So there's a lot greater risk.
In that process of scaling up, we had to protect our recipes,
Yeah.
and obviously not having a patent, we were signing non-disclosure agreements with factories to have a level of protection, which is only as good as you have the funds to actually execute those agreements. So unfortunately, it is a little bit of a leap of faith when it comes to startups. But it's important to have one, because one day you might actually be in a position where you can enforce it, or at least it's a deterrent. So when we look at our strategy right now, we have a number of commercial agreements, number of non-disclosure agreements in place. We protected our name. We are currently looking at the product names, and we are also looking at a new R&D process, research and development process, when it comes to a new protein source, and that will definitely have potential for patents. So as we look at our company now, we're trying to build the value around IP, which we haven't done before. But that's where we are at now. Trade secrets.
Awesome. Yeah, I think that's the point I think we wanted to get across to everybody, that every company is different, will likely have, varying degrees of intellectual property, patents, trademarks, trade secrets, but in the end, it is something, it is a personal journey. And I think what we would all agree on is you got to protect as much as you possibly can, period, the end of the story, So let's move on from that. Let's talk about money. Right, it's all about money, right? Everybody's raising money. Nobody has money. Like people on the call have no money. Like nobody has money, and so let's talk about your Peter and Emma. We'll stick with you. Let's talk about your relationship or your company's relationship with money, bootstrapping, when to bring investors, how it all kind of shook out. There's plenty of people that don't even want to bother with investors, want to do it themselves. So maybe we can talk about that a little bit. Go for it.
Can you hear me? Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, great. Okay. So I suppose I'll start off with a little bit. I'll let Peter kind of lean into this. But basically, I suppose our investor strategy. So when we changed our mindset from, I suppose, small business owners to wanting to build a globally reaching business, there were far new considerations that we had to take on board, like lots of them, from like production and supply regulation for multiple markets to international logistics, or like the microbial shelf life of the products are now something we have to consider. So for instance, in our Brazola, which is beef, we were previously putting in reishi mushroom because, well, for loads of different reasons of the flavor, but also the nutritional benefits, that's something we had to remove because we found through testing that it was just causing, bacterial growth, which is natural, but we had to take it out of the product. So we knew we needed investment for all of this. Everything was going to be costing money. But we were actually in the process of, I suppose, eliminating which incubators, accelerators, and VCs we should approach. And at that time point when we were at the business of Vegan Deli. So as we were in that process of looking at who would ethically align with us that we could move forward with in a business perspective and get funding from, or at least approach them for funding, over that 3-month period, people actually approached us that were on our list. So before we actually went out to them, some of them that were kind of our go-to, we'd love to work with them, they actually came to us and they offered us a seat at the table and they said, listen, we'd love to have you on board. Would you consider coming on board with us? So of course, I mean, who is a startup turns down money, right? So it was an accelerator on this particular occasion. And it was a European accelerator, pretty well respected, well known, but we actually ended up turning them down. So they were the first people to come to us and, I suppose, offer us money. And really, I mean, who the hell does that? People would say we were crazy to turn it down, but really we kind of had some serious conversations around, right, at this point in our business, even though it's not at the value we wanted, we know the value our business is going to achieve. We know where we want to take it. So they were asking for really high equity and they were giving us very little financial backing for that. And the benefit in kind they were offering, it was really overvalued. So I suppose you could say that it was a bit of a risky move to do it. It wasn't reckless. For us, it was a really calculated move because a month later, we actually secured I suppose, funding that was 10 times as much revenue for a quarter of the equity with a really respected globally VC, and got accepted to their accelerator, like one of 5 companies, and there were hundreds that applied. So the risk paid off, but many startups wouldn't have turned down that additional money for a mad amount of equity that they wanted in the company. But we did, and it panned out for us.
Just in terms of the relationship with the money, bootstrapping in the beginning, using our own funds, we were not using our family money because we didn't want a situation where you actually lose relationship over that. So if we failed with our own money. But we took it too long. We didn't realize that actually when you want to make it big, you need to bring other people into the company. So we looked at accelerators. We picked the right one, I think. Now, obviously, we made a few mistakes. We stuck with a co-manufacturer that wasn't good for us, and a lot of our money went down the drain. We've developed the product for a year, and our co-manufacturer went insolvent just before Christmas. So we had to start from the beginning. We already had a TV show lined up. We filmed already, and our products were not on any shelves anywhere.
So if you just give, sorry. So just to give a bit of context, last summer we actually filmed this amazing TV show, which was going to launch us. And we had all the filming done and completed. They were in post-editing. And then basically we're about to go to market with our products after developing them for a year. And our co-manufacturer went under without telling us or any of the other clients. A lot of the other businesses went completely, they're buggered, they're closed now. And this is coming into Christmas. And we're like, oh my God, we're buggered. We're going to be screwed. We have this TV show coming out. We have no product. To get to a new manufacturer would take about 8 months. TV show came out 3 months later. We're like, how the hell are we going to turn this around? This is only 3 to 4 months ago.
Just to finish off on this topic, because I know we have obviously other speakers. The way we overcame this challenge was to arrange a financing agreement with the bank. And we are, for every sale invoice, we get 70% in advance. We pay a fee for that, but we close the cash flow gap. So anytime we issue an invoice, a sales invoice, we get money within 24 hours.
3 months. So
you don't have to wait for 3 months for the customer to pay you.
There's cash flow in the business.
Okay, that there's also you put in a lot. I think it's important for people to understand turning down money, bootstrapping, loans from banks. So thank you. That's like almost like a kind of quintessential kind of story of a startup. Yes, the actual devil's in the details, but thank you for that. We'll come back to you, Vanessa. What about you? I think you biotech needs a shitload of money too.
Yes.
So
yeah. It's been interesting. And I came in expecting, I don't want to say the worst, but raising as a Black woman, very technical, was not expecting to have a lot of traction. I would say those who were for me came to support me. And that's kind of how I found my tribe and the right persona of investors to pursue. I too looked at different incubators and different accelerators to try to find the right fit. I'm also a BIV graduate, and so found the program to be very valuable in terms of both the cash infusion. They closed out our pre-seed round, but also the connections to other larger food tech investors and being in that ecosystem, where I would otherwise not have, the ability to tap in and network. In terms of how we got started, I was able to bootstrap a little, invest in the company myself to kind of get the first few months going. And then I tapped into my network of friends and family who were able to give on the smaller checks of angels. They were probably, most of them were first-time angel investors, to be honest. But that's how I got my first 100K. And then between BIV and some other larger angels, that is what closed out my pre-seed round and gave me the ability to start hiring my first scientists. I got a lab in San Diego, was able to get our first customers into pilots. And though we're still pre-revenue right now, it's allowed us a bit more runway to go on, the road and attend conferences and get our name out there. So it's a love-hate relationship for sure. Having to ask for money, especially large sums of money, is not the most comfortable, but there's money out there, and the right investors are still out there. So I would say keep fighting the good fight and be authentic, and the right people will find you.
You know, Vanessa, I want to just stay on you for one more second, because you brought up two concepts that I think people have to be somewhat comfortable with. You either have to be the type of company that is okay with, you know, kind of asking friends and family, and I totally respect Peter and Emma not doing. I know many of my clients don't like to do that, but that's one. So I want to talk a little bit of that, and then also, you know, just asking. Right? Like, just like, you probably have never, I mean, you maybe ask your father for $5 or your mom for $10 when you were younger, but like, I don't know, how does it all, you know, play out, you know?
So I would say I was lucky that the people who were around me saw my previous successes in my career, and they believed in me. And so once I just said, you know, I'm launching this company, most people were, I want to know what you're doing now, tell me more. And so that's basically how I got my first couple of investors, is just by authentically telling people what I was building and being passionate about it. And some people said, I want to help you directly. Some people said, I don't have the funds, but I want to introduce you to someone who will. And that's really kind of word of mouth how I got my first larger than, you know, 10, 20K checks. My largest angel check, actually, she asked what my minimum was, and I said 10. She's like, oh, that's too small. Like, so there's a certain point where you realize, I forgot who said it, but you do have to go big in terms of being able to scale and grow the company in the way that you want. But it is nerve-wracking. There's more people to report to and answer to and give updates to. So getting comfortable with that relationship, but I lead with transparency and communication. And so that's how it's been, me getting over that first initial like hesitation in terms of bringing people in. I'm also committed, and I put my own funds in, so that also gives people another level of you know, we're all in this together. So I have some skin on the table as well.
Love that. Love that. Thank you for that. That's great. Juan, what about you? How's it been asking for money and raising money?
I mean, that's kind of the thing that you do as a startup, right? Like, you're always asking for money. That's one thing that you realize when you're an entrepreneur. Like, fundraising never really stops, which is a lesson learned. And for me, in my personal experience, like before microTERRA, we were in the UK. Luckily, it was a spin out of a university, and there's a lot of grants and funding available there through Innovate UK and a bunch of different places there. So it does vary by geography and how you started off. Like, there's no kind of like playbook that everybody can follow in terms of raising money. I think that's one key component. But with microTERRA, for example, we started with IndieBio in New York, and that was when the pre-seed round was raised, and it was oversubscribed, and we were able to get a lot of investors interested in microTERRA through that, and then get a lot of really interesting partners. And right now, as we've progressed through, you know, asking for more money and like the round we're currently raising right now, there's a couple key things that I think would be worth pointing out, particularly with us in the food industry, that one thing that's worked really well in recent weeks is running tastings with investors or in conferences, for example, because sometimes, you know, when you're talking about biotech and very specific ingredients, people that don't have a scientific background, and sometimes investors are not as sophisticated, they don't really understand what you're doing, right? So some people sometimes confuse our ingredient flora as another kind of like sugar replacement, like another stevia. And that's not actually what we do. We're a flavor modulator, and it's a different thing. But when people actually see, like, you have your control ice cream, and then you have one with flora, and it looks different, it tastes better, the texture's better, and they're like, oh, now I get it. This is what you're doing. Plus, you know, every scoop of ice cream is cleaning 20 liters of water because we're absorbing all this nitrogen. They're like, now I get the story. Now I connect with it. It's more visceral. It's more emotional. So there's a behavioral aspect to it that I think it's really important to think about. And I guess the last thing that I'll say as well is really trying to understand where the money is. So right now, we've realized that a lot of the money is actually coming from impact investors, right? So a lot of them actually have certain thesis and want to have startups that, you know, are both profitable but also have a clear climate impact associated with them. So our business, we kind of established it as a way as we scale our business, we scale our impact, because the more ingredients that we sell, the more we can scale our farms and clean more water in our process, right? So identifying where that is and how to tell that story as well to the investors, that you're meeting the criteria that they're looking for to invest in different companies, was also incredibly helpful for us in recent times.
You actually bring up a really good topic. I think we need to get into, which is that this kind of revolution of food that's happening, right? You can probably go into any restaurant anywhere these days, and there are vegan options, and there are, there's all sorts of, like, not yet, but there are certain restaurants with like alternative proteins or cultivated meats, right? There's certain companies in the US that now have that. There are cell-based meats, or, there's all sorts of kind of new terms. People, what's happening here? And so, like, there's a lot that, so to your point, there is a lot of education that kind of goes with any company launching anything new, particularly in food. Maybe you can talk a little bit about that, and like, how does that factor into your journey? Here you are in a lab. I'm trying to bring something to the table. We just kind of got comfortable with farm to table. Now we're doing lab to table. So, like, how does that all kind of play out in terms of your strategy and also with the investors?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, there's a huge component about storytelling, right? So we're primarily a B2B company, which you would assume that we just have to convince our clients, certain corporates or flavor houses, or whoever we're selling it to directly, to understand the value, and they're in the food industry, so they'll probably get it. But at the same time, it's not as simple. So you do have to have a storytelling kind of like communication strategy behind it. So when we released Flora, for example, our first ingredient, we did a whole launch video that took you through the journey of, like, this is how it works, this is what our farm looks like, this is duckweed, this is what it does, how it cleans water, this is how, once you transform it, this is all the places where you can do it, this is how it works. And, like, in a very catchy, quick, people have short attention spans as well, so you have to do it with, like, a little bit of music, fun, that people do it and post it in social media and other places. And that's how we got traction. People were like, oh, now I understand what you're doing. This is kind of how it works, right? So the communication strategy around it is hyper important. And as I said, similar with the strategy with investors of doing tastings and kind of having that visceral reaction, we've also had some lessons learned with corporates as well, right? Like, you can have certain promises about what your ingredient does, and you're like, hey, we can help your products do this. But what has been most effective for us is actually sending them certain samples of their own product with our ingredient. And it's like, look at the difference and the positive impact that we can have. And then you have a call with them and they're like, oh, wow, I can taste the difference. Let's see what we can do. Let's start a pilot. Let's figure something out, right? But, like, there's nothing like trying it yourself. And that's kind of how you can sometimes hack these kind of things.
I love that strategy. Like, just show them exactly what your product can do for their product. That's great. Vanessa, science, like, I mean, let's face it, most of the population is not, too up on science. And so that extra level that you have to kind of educate and empower people on, how is that kind of played out for you?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It's been a learning curve for me as well. I think Juan brings up a great point about the storytelling. When I first was pitching the business to both customers and investors, I tried to educate, oh, this is what, just kill them with facts. And if anything, you just see the eyes glaze over and no one gets it, and the call is over. And so the pitch had to become something more that people can engage with. And that's why we're focusing on flavor and taste, because fundamentally, in order for all of the products that we're talking about now to reach impact, is that the general consumer needs to authentically, consistently engage with alternative proteins as not a secondary, as not that's a choice, because they're just good. And when you come to, like, that's the high level sort of way that I pitch now, people get it. And they understand that when all of the other issues in the industry, the scaling, the price parity, all of those other things get fixed, which they will, if you're still left with the taste problem and the consistency problem, that's still going to, kill the industry as a whole. And so that's how I lean into getting it from a a kind of an emotional engagement. And then I take them through the science in terms of this is the way that we are approaching it. This is the lens that we're looking through it. And we have experience doing this in, healthcare and other sectors. And so that's why we're the right people or the right team to do it. So I felt that approach has been one that's well received, and it's pitching has never been my best strong suit. And so it's one of the things that I found that I can come from the heart with and lead, and it becomes more authentic that people can connect with. But yeah, the storytelling is important.
Yeah, the storytelling is hugely important. I think in this space, I think with any food product, it doesn't have to be alt protein or meat grown in a lab. It's any kind of new product that's coming on the shelf. So Peter and Emma are just curious because you've danced around it already, I think twice now. You have, and I want people to know, your storytelling probably can now best be seen by millions of by millions of viewers in the UK version of like Shark Tank for food, basically. Maybe you can talk about that because there's no going back from that, right? And so maybe talk about that experience and kind of just let people know what we're talking about, and then kind of segue into the story you've had to tell.
So storytelling is, for every company, is extremely important, but I think especially with food, because we all connect with when you see ads for food, it's all about the visual and how it's oozing juices, and it speaks to all the senses. So when you're talking about your company, you want to engage all of the other senses as well. For us, the story has evolved over time. So coming out from the accelerator, we were influenced by what the investors are looking for. So our story around our meats was how we make them, what makes the texture right, what makes the taste right, what techniques we're using as coming from Michelin kitchens. But as we went out to the market and we were speaking to customers, we realized that our story has to change a little bit, because now we are talking to people who are listening and they want to hear other things. They want us to hear what is our background, where are we coming from, why are we different than another company. So we had to think about who is the audience, and we still have to change our story when we talk to big idea ventures. And so our story changes when we are not changes, but I suppose tweaks when we talk to our shareholders, and it's definitely different when we are thinking about how we are marketing our products and what story we tell about the brand.
David, did you want to know a little bit about the TV show that just aired last week to 10 million viewers?
Yeah, I think you should talk about it just to let people know, because that's a big storytelling choice for sure.
Yeah, well, because we work so long, as startup founders usually do, we do 18-hour days, we don't actually watch TV. Bizarrely, they have thousands of companies applying all the time. We didn't apply to them. They kind of found us because we do a vegan foie gras. And they said, listen, would you be interested in putting it on the show? And I was like, what the hell? We can't go on a TV show. We're not going retail. Essentially, our business, since we went into the BIV accelerator, was all about food service. And that's how we were going to expand. And that was the business model. But pretty fast, we realized we couldn't pass up this opportunity. It was consumer-based, this TV show, highest viewership in the UK, primetime TV. They're going to focus. I mean, you couldn't pay for that kind of exposure as a company. They're going to tell our entire story. They're going to, the head buyer for Aldi in the UK, which is Aldi in America, and they own Trader Joe's as well, is basically going to taste our product on screen and tell us our first impression of what she thinks, along with two other award-winning buyers. So this could either go really tits up all together and end the company, or it's going to make us millions of pounds, one or the other. So, and they didn't know it was vegan. So the producer specifically said, when you go near your products where no one's saying it's vegan, they're going to think it's a proper meat product. And I was like, oh, I think this is a bit risky. But anyway, we did it. And we were actually in the States with you, David, when it aired. So we couldn't see how we came across, because the final edit is important. It doesn't matter whether you win or not. And essentially, we didn't really, well, I mean, everyone says that who doesn't win, right? But we didn't actually want to win because it's not our target audience, the Aldi customer. We're more of a gourmet offering going into Michelin star restaurants, down food service channels, pizzerias, stuff like this. However, the sound bites are really important. So if they say something negative about a vegan product, that's going to impact what the consumer thinks now that we've decided to go retail. So we basically got our product into shops all around the country the day before the TV show aired with a new co-manufacturer. So we were literally working through the night, even before we went on your radio show in New York, David. We were actually dealing with logistics companies in the UK, trying to get frozen pallets into storage so they could be signed off and out to shops. It was crazy. But it was all A-okay. And then we got back to the UK a couple of days ago. We saw that it was amazing coverage. Everyone said amazing things. Only good sound bites were put out. Everyone's like, it's amazing. We love the product. It's so delicious. One of the buyers was just like going nuts for it. And I said, what would you say if I told you all of this was vegan? Oh, I'm shocked. And I was like, that's brilliant, because that's our tagline: shockingly delicious, shockingly nutritious. Oh, you couldn't pay for it. Brilliant. So
Exactly. That's the key right there. It doesn't matter if you win or lose. It's good marketing, and everybody should try to get into that if they could.
Yeah. And on the top of that, an article just came out today, which gives us massive coverage because of the TV show. Loads of magazines and publications, industry and consumer focus, have now kind of like focused on us as like the vegan offering. Even though we didn't win, we were the only vegan company represented on the show. So that's been huge. A massive article came out today that will really help us secure more distribution channels with the buyers we want to talk to. So it's brilliant for building like brand recognition from a food service perspective and a consumer perspective.
Yeah, it's amazing. Congratulations on that. It's
Add final note on the storytelling. So, because I know we have garlic and goats. So we have seen a lot of companies that are based around animal products that do focus on the provenance of the food. Where does the food come from? What kind of lifestyle the animals have? A lot of vegan companies will focus around the health benefits or some other benefits of the actual product, but especially with companies onto the markets, like cultivated meat type of companies, they want to stay away from highlighting the science aspect of it and rather relate to the health benefits of the product. So that's what we have seen from our side, but every company has to do some soul searching and think about how they want to tell their story.
Yeah, amazing. Thank you for that comment. I think that's really important. And like somebody just said, we are organic. But I want to kind of break that down a little bit. I actually want to pose it to Vanessa first. So regardless of what type of company you are, whether you're a kind of food science company, or a kind of all protein company, or you're just making or you just have a local restaurant or something like that, or you're shipping products online, there is regulatory stuff. You can't just simply I mean, you could just simply put your products in a package and then sell it like at the farmer's market. But if you want to get into like Whole Foods, or you want to just do something even local or even national, you need to jump through some regulatory hoops. I know you're pre-revenue, but maybe you can talk about what some of your hurdles will be in the future to kind of get to the shelf, or to get or actually to get to, or to sell to other businesses.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great question, and we're just starting to put together that plan and that dossier, actually. So right now, there are several different use cases for our products. We're a B2B company, and depending on I would say where you incorporate our products in the manufacturing process, our customers, where they incorporate our products into their manufacturing process, will dictate the level of regulatory hoops we need to get through. I would say on the first level, we're planning on doing GRAS, which is generally recognized as safe. It's a notification process from the FDA, and it's basically you submitting data showing that your product is safe, and they give you an opinion saying yes or not, we agree with you. That is the baseline that we're planning on doing for our first products, which are enzymes that are used as an upstream manufacturing process. In some of our more closer to the consumer packaged product, there are use cases that I'm thinking through that it may be considered a food additive or color additive, which are treated differently by the FDA, and putting together a strategy for that now currently. they require slightly different applications, and I'm looking into, you know, what kind of lift we need to do on the alchemy side. Do we need regulatory lawyers? Do we just need a consultant? Are we going to put our dossier together by ourselves? Kind of thinking through those things. The food additive is more of a regulatory approach or pathway that I would normally see on the traditional biotech side that I came with, where you engage the FDA, you have some meetings before you go to market. They tell you, you know, the kind of data that they're looking for, and then you put that together, you do the experiments and you put that together. It is, of course, going to require, it's more intensive, it's going to require more funds. And so we see that being probably, you know, 6 months to a year out. But with anything, especially as you're building your business, you want to see those blind spots. And so even if you aren't particularly planning on doing, you know, a submission this year, you should at least, or at least my goal is to have a strategy for when it comes up, how I want to deal with it. Some of our customers have asked, are we food grade? Are we GRAS certified? Those are the kind of questions that we're currently starting to get. And so even if we are not going to do the submission ourselves, that's another way that we are looking for value add corporate partners. So
Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. I mean, all these labels come with meanings, even organic, you know, plant-based, vegan, they all come with meanings, you know, grass. So it's good to know that the company is thinking about this now, you know, as opposed to it being upon you. Juan, I think you have similar kind of obstacles, we'll call it, to kind of get to market or to kind of stay in market.
Yeah, exactly. We actually, David and I had a conversation recently about grass. And yeah, it's the same thing. I mean, we currently have COFEPRIS, which is the equivalent of the FDA in Mexico, and we have our ingredient, at least this first one, Flora approved through COFEPRIS, and it's registered as a natural fiber lemna extract, which is great. And that's another key point I think to highlight. By the way, we're also kind of pursuing grass right now for the US, particularly because certain clients want the self grass, and a lot of the corporates that we're doing pilots with, that's a bit of the requirement, just so you know our ingredients are recognized as safe. But when we're talking about kind of the categorization of how our ingredients are registered, particularly with the COFEPRIS, the Mexican FDA, because it's a natural extract, we're not an additive, right? So a lot of the challenges that manufacturers are facing right now is that they want to reformulate to make their products potentially healthier, reduce sugar, do all these things, but they don't want artificial additives. And that's a challenge, right? Because if you want to reformulate and make it healthier, but you add additives, then you're facing a different challenge, and it's not ideal, right? So the fact that we're an ingredient and not an additive is a big advantage for us. And from a regulatory standpoint, but also from a consumer facing standpoint, we have those benefits. Also, I guess talking about regulation, at least in Mexico and Latin America, there's been laws that have been passing over the last couple of years that are front of package labeling laws. So a lot of them past a certain level, they have to, you know, have a big tag on their product that says excess calories, excess sugars, excess sodium, all these different things. Plus, there's for sugar sweetened beverages, there's a tax involved, right? So they're taxed at about 11% for sugar sweetened beverages like soda. So there's also like a cost implication from a regulatory standpoint that they're like, hey, I can't continue to have these tags on my products because it's like a big tag on the packaging. So can you help us reduce that, but not add other tags? And also potentially there's a cost savings around it. There's also like a marketing component of it because, for example, for children in Mexico, you can't no longer have the caricatures that you had in like cereal boxes. Like can't have that anymore. You can't market that. So there's a lot of implications from a regulatory standpoint that our clients are facing. So it's also important to understand what barriers they're facing and whether you can help them mitigate those challenges through including your products in their formulations.
Yeah, you bring up a really good point as well that probably Emma and Peter can talk to, is this cross-border thing, right? Like, so here you are, everything's great in Mexico. Now we want to come into the United States. That probably has a whole host of other issues that we weren't even facing. So Emma and Peter, you are in the UK. You have a product on the market. You're trying to get into the United States. what kind of obstacles are you facing? And by the way, this is the same kind of obstacles if you're in New York trying to, sell in New Jersey.
We're looking at the
Yes, it's a
cost of
different
logistics.
type of thing, but it's all kind of related to the issues of what a startup has to kind of think about. Maybe you can talk a little bit about that, Peter and Emma.
The first challenge before we even get to the regulation is you have to think about who is producing your product and are they able to make that product for that market. So first thing that we would have to be doing if we are coming to States, we would have to look at the flavor profile, because there are different consumer expectations in the US and different expectations in the UK. Actually, a company, Givaudan, has a very good service where they do a profile of flavor based on a geographical location. And obviously they have a range of from artificial additives to natural ingredients, and they can help to cater to that flavor profile that you're looking for. But currently, the way we work with our co-manufacturer, we are lucky enough, this is our second co-manufacturer, that would be flexible to do a different line of products for us for export markets, which is not always the case. We've dealt with big co-manufacturers before, and they are very inflexible. They don't want to innovate. They don't want to do much for a startup because they always look at the volume and they have other bigger clients. Next thing is the labeling. You have a very different standard in the US versus Europe, and we would need to get a consultant to get us cleared to make sure we are not landing ourselves in trouble, having product on the market already, and then you have to recall your products because there's a compliance issue. So first thing we were told when it comes to the US, you need to get a lawyer, and you go in lawyer first before you do anything else in the US. We're also looking at having our footprint very low in the beginning. So we are not looking to have a huge network of distribution. We are looking to
One or two solid.
make an arrangement with one or two companies where we only deliver to one fulfillment center, and they handle logistics in the US.
The logistics are extremely expensive in the US. You can say that the logistics are. Oh, no, I was just going to say that obviously looking even at our logistical footprint in the US, if we were to do in the US what we're doing in the UK, our margin would absolutely evaporate because of the logistics alone, just dealing and getting stuff state to state. So it's essential for us to partner up with the correct distribution channels that will help us alleviate all of those kind of extras that are going to eat into the margin of the company.
And the final challenge is if you are not in the market already, you may not know a lot of the costs that come with new markets. So for example, marketing wise, before we launched, we were not even in the UK. We didn't know how much money is needed for marketing. And this is on top of all the distribution costs and packaging and all that. So in the US, we would probably be looking at extra costs, getting a consultant in to make sure that we are able to price all our entry costs properly. And it requires an extra funding round so that we have a full-on budget with probably extra 10 to 15% margin for unexpected, unforeseen circumstances.
Awesome. By the way, if we went over the hour, we're gonna wrap it up shortly. But if anybody has any questions, just maybe raise your hand and you can ask it live. But I just kind of, while that's happening, I kind of ask this to every entrepreneur that we always have on this series. I think it's really important. I don't think I prepared you for this one yet. I'm sorry about that, but I wanna just bring it up. We'll start with Vanessa, because we all this whole journey is about making mistakes, right? Also, and learning from them. So like maybe you can talk, maybe you can just shed some light on maybe a mistake that you might have made, or potentially how you learned from a mistake. It doesn't tell us a mistake per se, but maybe how you learned from it, or maybe something that you would have done differently. Well, we can put it in that way as well.
Yeah. I would say, I'm being diplomatic. So I would say the way The way the company was originally started, I did it was through a venture studio. And I would say that experience, I went in a little more naive than I am now. I wish I have a legal team review everything I sign now. I am much more willing to pay lawyers to make sure now, yeah, that things are done with my best interest top of hand. However, that experience allowed me to be a better negotiator, ask for what I want, and be very clear about my intentions up front. And so though it didn't end up the way I had intended, which, you know, I still had to go through another accelerator, I'm still raising and all of this, it allowed me early on to have a very clear picture of the sort of struggles that might come up again. And so just being better prepared around having a strategy, thinking, you know, 3-4 steps ahead, on if things go great or if things go horribly bad, what are you going to do? And I wouldn't even characterize it as a mistake, but it was one of those things where now the legality of everything that I signed is very top of mind. And so I always want to make sure that my I's are dotted and my T's are crossed before I move forward with any, you know, whether it be an NDA, a contract, anything. And so that's something that I learned early on and I take with me. Yeah.
I love it. Love it, love it, love it. Perfect. Thank you. Juan, mistakes or things that you would have done differently?
I mean, there's a million mistakes and you can always learn from all these. But I think one fun story, I guess, that has a really positive spin from it is when we were first trying to extract things from duckweed, from lemna, we were optimizing for pectin. And there's a lot of ways that we were trying to get pectin in. At some point, we did some sensory tests, put it in certain formulations, and we realized what's happening here. Somebody messed up the formulation because this is way too sweet and this tastes very different. And like we tried it and we tried it again, we tried it again. We're like, actually, no, what it's doing, what we ended up extracting is this flavor modulator that actually does potentiate sweetness and it maintains the texture and all this stuff. And we're like, it's a very happy mistake. I don't know if we would have pursued it initially, would have gotten to this same place, but sometimes that happens, right? Like you keep hitting your head against the wall, particularly in R&D, and science kind of works like that. You try a million ways that didn't work until you hit one. So it's also like just be open to those mistakes and potentially pivoting based on a mistake can also change the direction of your company, which is kind of what happened with us.
Amazing. Yeah, be flexible and nimble as much as you possibly can. I totally agree. Peter, Emma, any mistakes or I think you mentioned one or two before, but things you would have done differently or mistakes?
Well, plenty of mistakes. We don't have enough time for all of them. I suppose the biggest one was with the manufacturing process. The first manufacturer that we found, we stuck too long with them. There were warning signs all over. They were delaying one trial after another, asking us to put in more money into ingredients, into the trials. And we should have walked away, just cut our losses a few months in, instead of letting it go on for such a long time.
Because we had a personal relationship with them.
We had a personal relationship with them, and
Yeah.
that kind of obscured our view a little bit.
You should have been more shrewd.
And also, I would say from my own point, having corporate background before helped me with organizing the company, but I was never really running a startup and thinking about the proper budgets on a long-term basis. So I assumed several times that we would be selling already, and I had these assumptions in my head. And each time we had to push and push and push that deadline, and sales were not coming in yet. So that's another mistake that I keep in mind, and I always think about the worst case scenario, but I don't focus on it too much, but I want to be prepared financially for the worst case scenario, but I always hope for the best. And I saw a very quick
Question.
question
Please.
about food rating. So this is one of the things that is really a talking point right now when it comes to food products and communicating better what is in your product. So there is this NOVA classification of foods, and a lot of our products actually fall under that as well. So if you are using a processed let's say pea protein, something that raises the nutritional profile of your product, a lot of the time it will fall under this classification that it's an ultra processed food. And consumers obviously are now educated to avoid ultra processed foods. We communicate on our pack the no artificial ingredients, and we are now looking at,
We're very transparent.
we are now looking at putting the color rated system, which is very popular in Europe, and it highlights based on recommended daily percentages of your macros, so fats, salt, which ones you should be avoiding. It gives you a snapshot based on your nutritional profile if the sugar is low, if salt is low, and that's a very good Nutri-Score, exactly. And that's a very good system to put on your pack, provided you have a good nutritional profile.
I will just add in relation to this particular topic. We did an article or a piece all about this ultra processed foods and the labeling with specialty fine foods, and I think Veg Economist covered it as well. So if you Google shocking foods, it goes into detail all about this and the ultra processed labeling and how that applies. So yeah.
Awesome. I want to give everybody a kind of final word before we end. Again, if you have a question, now's the time to raise your hand. Otherwise, you can get in touch with okay, Angela, Angelia.
Hi there. Yesterday, I was just at a livestock workshop where the largest cattle ranchers were at yesterday. And one of the topics was the new foods, new meats that are coming out. And so my question is for Vanessa, like what made you go into this particular field? Like what about the new meats or the seasonings in the new meats that propelled you that way?
Oh, yeah. So personally for me, I do think this is the future for food. I think food insecurity is going to hit in many different ways. And personally, being at a lot of these conferences, there's not a lot of people who look like me in a part of the conversation. So when trying to, and I also come from a family of farmers. My family is Costa Rican and Jamaican. We have family farms in the Caribbean. And so with that background and that lens, I wanted to bring the same sort of lean product development and sort of strategic product development to the food tech space that I didn't personally feel was there previously. It's more of just scale, build, get something out. And I think there's a better way.
Love
Thank
that.
you.
Thank you.
I would love to, I don't know if you put your information in the chat, but I would love to correspond with you.
Yeah, I'll drop my LinkedIn in the chat. Feel free to reach out.
Yeah,
Okay.
please do that. Again,
Can I also?
yeah, please go
Oh,
for
go
it.
ahead.
Go.
I love the interaction between Peter and Emma, and I do hope to continue a conversation with you as well. And Juan, most of the things you were saying were over my head. Thank you so much.
I love it because
I'm just teasing.
Well,
teasing.
So
Thank you.
that's awesome. Thank you for that. Again, this is being recorded. It will be sent out to all the registrants, whether you showed up or not. There will be some contact information there as well. But yes, Juan, if you want to share yours as well, I know Peter and Emma has. I want to give the three of you the last word. This will be seen. This is videotaped, and this is going to be on YouTube, and this kind of goes out to a larger network. What, like right now, where are you? What are you looking for? What do you need? How can we help? How can anybody help? We'll start with Vanessa.
Money. I'm just kidding.
I told you it's all about money, people. It's all about money.
Well, in addition to investors, we're raising our seed round. So in addition to investors, always raising. But honestly, good corporate partnerships. We're just starting to, look at some of our competitors. Good collaborations, strategic collaborations. That's what we're looking for, both on the customer side, the partnership side, scaling and manufacturing. Those are things that we're thinking about now. So If you're in the space and you're looking to partner or improve your product in any way, would love to have a conversation.
Love that. Thank you. Peter, Emma?
We are at the moment just fresh off the TV show, and we sold our first pallet, which is with a wholesaler. So our focus is on getting our business set up properly in the UK. We are planning to be in the US in 2025. In the meantime, we are fundraising to expand into the US while working on research and development for a new protein source, which I can't talk about at the moment.
I will just add in, I suppose Peter hasn't mentioned it. I didn't mention on the call. And as a female entrepreneur, you never usually step up to the table and tell people how good you are. But it is important to say that we are obviously a plant-based vegan meat company, but we are innovative. We just won Food Startup of the Year at the National Startup Awards. We won Best New Business at the Best Business Women Awards in the UK, and the most prestigious business awards in the UK, where you get an audience with the British Prime Minister, called the Great British Entrepreneur Awards. I personally just won Equity-Backed Entrepreneur of the Year. So, you know, and 2% of equity globally goes to female founders. So that in itself is just a huge achievement for female entrepreneurs. And look, I'm a college dropout personally. I have severe ADHD. I come from a working class family in a rural environment, tiny village in Western Ireland. And now I'm being afforded an audience with the British Prime Minister where I get to talk policy. It's like being in the room with Joe Biden, telling him how to shape the food network that, you know, going forward. So I suppose representation is important and visibility is important. I was very fortunate that I come from a family where my great grandmother started our family business 4 generations ago, before women had the right to vote. So I grew up with really strong female role models. And I want everyone out there to realize it doesn't matter what your humble background is, where you start out, you are worthy. You just need to know how worthy you are. Everyone is capable, no matter where you come from. So I just want to be an advocate for that and for female entrepreneurs to know that you can achieve anything you want and you always deserve a seat at the table. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise.
Amen. Love
Amen,
that.
I was gonna say.
Amen. Amen. I love that. Final thoughts from Juan.
Sure. Hard to follow that. That
Hard
was
to
super
follow for
inspirational.
sure.
Yeah,
You can
that was
do it. If
amazing.
anyone can, it's you.
So I mean, I guess it's quite similar to Vanessa. We're always fundraising. We're actually fundraising around right now. So any obviously money that can come through or connections to investors or anything of that nature would be amazing. And also contacts within customers, different brands that are exploring to do different things to make their products more sustainable, you know, healthier without less sugar, but without losing the texture, all these different things. We have great performances in vegan ice cream and flavored milk and jams and marmalades and sauces like tomato sauce we figured out in beverages. So anybody that wants to collaborate with us, wants to do a co-development, develop a new product, that would be amazing. Or has contacts with potential large corporates that they're like, hey, I think this company might want to do a pilot with you guys because it could fit within it. Absolutely. Here to help, and also feel free to reach out. Always happy to chat.
Thank you, Juan. Thank you to all of you. I really, really appreciate this. This was super fun. We will have another entrepreneurial strategy series next month. It's something a little bit different. It's all about copyrights and copyright trolls. There's a lot of those out there. So if you use an image and then all of a sudden get a cease and desist letter and they're asking you for thousands of dollars, that's what the next presentation will be about. But to Peter and Emma and to Juan and Vanessa, thank you so much. All 4 of you are completely inspiring, and we're rooting for you in every single possible way. So we're totally looking out and kind of see what you can do. So thank you. Congrats on all the success so far. And thank you for everybody for attending. And we'll talk and see you soon. Bye, everyone.